Welcome to Hollers and Hills, the podcast that takes you deep into the heart of East Tennessee's Great Smoky Mountains. The tourism hub welcomes millions of visitors a year, but it's also home to generations rooted in its Hollers and Hills. Join us as we uncover centuries-old rural communities, share rich history, and explore landmarks and attractions old and new. Meet the passionate craftsmen, entrepreneurs, and community leaders dedicated to preserving this beautiful region for future generations. Get ready to pack your bags and create your own mountain memories. Hollers and Hills is sponsored by Compass Ventures, a leading developer in Sevier County, helping to navigate your next trip to the Smokies. The Ogle name is synonymous with Sevier County. In fact, the Ogles were some of the first settlers in Gatlinburg and helped the area become a tourism mecca. The family, now generations deep, continues to serve the community and give tourists a reason to come back. In this episode, we sit down with Jake Ogle, who's continuing the family's commercial real estate business, which includes many concepts from Tanger outlets at Five Oaks to Skyland Ranch, one of Sevierville's newer attractions. We talk family heritage, tourism, and the Ogles' commitment to the Smoky Mountains. Hello and welcome to Hollers and Hills. I'm your host, Beth Haynes, alongside developer and community leader Austin Williams, and we are thrilled to have Jake Ogle with us today. Obviously, we talk about being fourth generation. He is ninth generation, though, to Sevier County, and he is a partner with Five Oaks Development Group, which is the family-owned commercial real estate business. We are friends, but you two kind of grew up together.
We did.
And your families mirror each other in that you go back many generations here in Sevier County.
Yeah, there's, and Austin can probably correct me, but there's about 10 to 12 families that were kind of original settling families, and we've all been trying to kill each other since day one. But no, that you look at the Reagans and the Whaleys and the Ogles and the McCarters and the Ombys. I mean, there's about 10 to 12, and so it's kind of neat because obviously as time has moved on, some folks have moved out of the area, but there's still a big, you could look at the population roll of Sevier County, and there's still a ton of people from those families.
Yeah, I was stalking your family a little bit, doing a deep dive, if you will, and I discovered that, just being from East Tennessee, you do hear the Reagans, the ONBs, the Ogles, so many families played a part, but really the Ogle family, if you have visited Gatlinburg, Sevierville, Pigeon Forge, there is a good chance that you have experienced a restaurant, a resort, a shop, or attraction that has ties to the Ogle family. We were talking, my first introduction to Ogles was Ogle Water Park.
Yep.
Now, I know that's not your direct family.
That's a completely different Ogle tribe.
I mean, how many branches are there with the Ogle family, and how many relatives do you have today?
Well, there was a woman many moons ago, Martha Jane Husky Ogle, and a lot of these families kind of trace back to her. So I sent you a link on SmokyKen.com. For us locals, the anxiety that you used to get when you turn over your report card or you'd see something for the first time, like what is it going to be? That's kind of what we get when we look at SmokyKen.com, because you're like, how incest am I? Because we all go back to this. There's all these families trace back to this one woman, and so really a lot of us are related. It's really just to what degree are we related?
Where did she settle in the Smoky region, like when she first moved here?
It was up in the Gatlinburg area. I believe near. In the Roaring Fork area, but I may have some fact checkers that.
Because I want to know if you two are related.
One of the I'm sure there's some connection. We were talking earlier, and one of the things that I thought would be interesting is, there was a downtown Greenbrier. I know that my great-great-great-grandfather had a couple businesses in, and that was where I know the Williams family was at, and that was up off the Old Settlers Trail, sort of towards the Cosby area. So it's interesting to think back, like how many generations ago did our ancestors actually do business together and know each other just like we do today.
Been doing it a long time, and a lot of these cities weren't even named what they are today. I mean, Gatlinburg was White Oaks Flats. It's just there's the evolution of the families in this area, and I think that link of going back to our ancestors, and maybe some of our family trees don't fork as much as we would hope that they would, but I think that connectivity and that initial link really is one of the reasons that I think makes this place special, because people love each other, they care about each other, and I think our guests see that visit this market.
Do you have family reunions at this point?
Oh gosh, we'd have to.
I can't imagine what that looks like.
We'd have to rent out Neyland Stadium, but we used to. I guess maybe 2 or 3, 4 generations. But if we did a really large one, I think it would be kind of overwhelming.
What goes back to the 1800s? That's when your family first came to Gatlinburg, right? First came to this area. And talk about, it was just that business mindset, almost that entrepreneurial spirit from the get-go.
Well, initially it was just survival.
It's just survival.
Because our Martha Jane Husky Ogle, they came over from South Carolina, just looking for a new life. And at that point, that was obviously well before the Great Smoky Mountains National Park was dedicated in 34 that was established in 34 and opened in 40, but this was well before then. And before the park was created, this was all, this is still part of Southern Appalachia, but it was very rural. Gatlinburg was just a logging community, and people were truly living, day to day. And then when the park started, that's when things really started to change. Not just in Gatlinburg, but it started to spread all throughout Sevier County.
And I think you mentioned kind of the matriarch of the Ogle family. She was a widow. Her husband discovered the area, right? Mm-hmm. I think it's incredible that she still, after his passing, moved the family here, brought her brother, I think, with her, and settled here. And then it's just fascinating to me, just the business mindset. You had the local store, the merchants that grew from that, a doctor, and then I'm fascinated by the matriarchs, the female trailblazers.
There's a bunch of them.
Oh my goodness! And so Hetty, who opened the first craft store, one of the first craft stores. Who is she to you?
She was my great-grandmother.
Okay. She was instrumental in tourism and really bringing people to this area. Started with a craft store, but then opened 2 hotels, an RV, even kind of had an Airbnb with her apartment at one point. Just
she was an entrepreneur. True and true. And what's amazing? Think about a female in that position at that time. Of how special that was and unique. But yeah, she was a grinder, and she, obviously, the national park was a big part in her success, because before the national park started, she had this is a story for you, but so she it wasn't the husband at the time, but her husband, soon to be husband's family, Charlie Ogle. They had a general store in Gatlinburg, and she opened up a general store, and she always used to say, if you can't beat the competition, marry it. So she opened up a general store and got in. Hers was called the Bearskin Craft Shop, and at that time, both of these general stores, they're serving this logging community. They were like what we know today as Walmart. They were selling everything from soap to produce to brooms to animal skins. It was kind of the one-stop shop. And so when the park was established and open, obviously tourism started to people started coming and visiting the area, and so the performance of these general stores started to grow, and then she got into lodging. She built several, probably 9 to 10 small little cabins in downtown Gatlinburg, which was not the downtown Gatlinburg that we know today. And that kind of transpired into she built the Bearskin Motor Court Motel. That was about, I think it was 15 bedrooms. And then she, like you said, she got into, she built another motel and got into RV campground, or no, they weren't RVs back then, but campgrounds. So it just kind of evolved over time. She worked hard, saved her money, and didn't sell anything.
I think to help us appreciate this even more, people are familiar with Gatlinburg. There's been landmarks that are still there. Where were these properties in present day Gatlinburg? What areas are we talking about?
Most of these properties, all of them were in Gatlinburg. For instance, the first motel that she built was downtown Gatlinburg, where we built a parking garage. It was the first parking garage built in downtown Gatlinburg. This would have been back in the 90s, and it's right beside TGI Fridays in Gatlinburg. So that was a spot. One of the general stores that were in Gatlinburg was where the Mountain Mall is today. As you come in, forget which traffic light it is, but it's right across from the aquarium. And so they were all pretty close. She had a campground over behind one of our hotels in Gatlinburg today, Appy Lodge. So they were spread out a little bit, but they were all pretty much within the Gatlinburg community. And then her real estate holdings started to expand. But
at what point did that happen? Did it move out of Gatlinburg into Pigeon Forge and then further down into Sevier? But was that family moving and starting their own business?
Yeah, the family was down and out. Family was starting to grow, and other generations were making their own investments elsewhere. But she primarily stayed pretty focused and centralized there in Gatlinburg, and so that's where she kind of planted her flags, so to speak.
I'm curious, what do you all do now to try to retell that story and honor that heritage?
We've got a hotel in Gatlinburg now, Bearskin Lodge, which pays tribute to the original bearskin that she had built, and so that story is told in that hotel, and then several of the other businesses we have, we try to tie in where it makes sense, tie in, whether it's a restaurant or a hotel or a retail endeavor. We try to tie in a portion of our family business that's applicable to that type of business genre.
There's so much history, and I think it's interesting, kind of the ripple effect. She had a craft shop. Gatlinburg today is home to crafters from all over the world with Aeromont.
She was a big advocate of Aeromont, and Aeromont was a game changer for our area. I mean, it provided, a skilled level of trade that allowed people to make a life for themselves and earn a living. And she loved to barter. So hey, I'll trade you 3 bearskins for a year's supply of sausage, or whatever. I mean, she was constantly trading and borrowing. I remember when FDR came to dedicate the park in 1940, as you can imagine, there was a big, there were people lined up all throughout Gatlinburg as he kind of made his way up the mountain, up to Newfound Gap, and she gave, I don't know if the motorcade stopped or whatever, but she gave FDR's wife an animal pelt. I guess, I don't know if it was a bearskin, but it was something. But there was a little, exchange there. Which no way you could do today. They'd shoot you before you could even stick your hand out.
Couldn't have that access. No.
The Secret Service, I guess, was a little bit more laid back then. But yeah, that she was constantly She was constantly wheeling and dealing. That one was.
But I read, she was around business her whole life. She started working in the store, I think, when she was 14.
14, and she stayed very active. She stayed very active in the business up until her, mid to late. She died when she was 102, and she was very active into her 90s. I remember one of my dad's first projects that he worked on was that parking garage in Gatlinburg, and he told me stories of, I mean, even she would have been in her 90s. You know, there was a little bit of a disagreement of, hey, is that a good idea? You know, at that time, you know, parking decks, I mean, they were common in big urban areas, but in a market like ours, you know, she's like, is this the best thing we should be doing? I don't know if we need to be, and he's like, hey, just, you know, this is going to be, this could be pretty good. And, you know, it ended up working out, but she was, she had a great mind, and she loved her family. People had to just roll their sleeves up and get to work because, you know, we didn't have like what we've got today with the opportunity and just, you know, the amount of people coming through here. It was, I mean, it was Southern Appalachia. You know, it's survival.
And like her, you grew up in the family business. What was that like, having the last name Ogle? Did you go to Ogles Water Park?
My scarlet letter. No, it was. I tell you, I didn't. You didn't. I didn't really think much about it until I moved away and went. I went to college at Furman over in Greenville, South Carolina, and so there's a lot of students at Furman that are from the southeast, so they have been coming to Gatlinburg. So I used to get Ogles Water Park was always the running, you know, the running joke.
I hope you had a yearly pass.
No, well, we did, but no, Ogles Water Park really was an institution, and it was it's you know, it's kind of cemented in our minds about just I mean,
I'm still traumatized from one of the slides. I made it all the way to the top and then said,
Well, I'm more traumatized by the floating diaper that I got hit, the open used diaper that I got hit in the face with on the lazy river. So we've all, as great as it was and nostalgic it was, we all have our horror stories from you know, a water park in the 80s and 90s.
I look back, I didn't realize that opened in 1970s. It was ahead of its time.
It was.
And you know, you look at this area and I'm baffled. You know, tourism continues to be so strong and a provider for this community, and it feels like the people of this region have always been forward thinkers and really just way ahead to be mountain folk. You know, often dubbed mountain folk. Yep. Just the ingenuity is impressive.
It is, and I think we've been very blessed. I mean, God has been so good to us with I mean, we were very fortunate with where the Smokies are positioned, and it being, you know, so, you know, within an 8-hour drive of over 3/4 of the United States population base, easy to get to. I mean, it's really set the stage and allowed us to grow as a tourism market. But you're right. I mean, there have been a lot of innovative, crafty, you know, risk-taking individuals that have developed great attractions and lodging and stuff. I mean, the national park's great, but you got to have stuff around it, I think, to really, you know, to make it all work.
You know, it's always been interesting to me how many entrepreneurs there are here, and I've never really thought about it until sitting here right now. It's because we had to, or our ancestors had to, and then starting businesses and being entrepreneurs has almost been a family trait that got passed down in many of those families. Because there's not manufacturing or other types of jobs here. It is.
And the topography didn't set up for that. I mean,
yeah.
You're exactly
right. We
right.
had to create attractions and places for people to stay and restaurants for people to enjoy while they're here visiting the Smokies.
Which I think is interesting for both of you. You were able to go away to college. Now, you went to Carson Newman, not too far from home. Was there any thought of not returning, of not coming back, of not carrying on the family legacy?
I don't want to speak for him, but I think I know what he would say, and we're on the same we're on the same wavelength here. This place just becomes a part of you, and I did not appreciate it. I did not appreciate it as much until I left. And when you leave, I mean, and I'm glad that I left and moved. I mean, I lived in Nashville for 4 years. You know, I've lived in Atlanta for a year. You really come to appreciate it even more when you're gone, just because of how special this place is, how special not only just the mountains, but we go back to the people. I mean, the people really are what make this place, or really what make any place special.
This place will always be home. And I always had intentions of that. But one thing that's been interesting over the past few years is I think when you know, we were graduating high school. A lot of people thought to find opportunity, I have to leave Sevier County. Yeah. I have to leave the Smokies and go to a Nashville or Atlanta, Charlotte, Louisville. But over the past 5 or 10 years, you know, we've seen a lot of really talented people move here, and a lot of, you know, big institutional investors look at the Smokies as a place to do developments and to be interested in, which is it's an interesting shift in dynamics.
Has that concerned you at all? I know you welcome that growth. You welcome people moving to this area, but how do you maintain the heritage? Is there a concern, maybe a protective arm, wanting to protect the history and make sure that you're moving forward, holding true to the Smoky Mountains and the people of the Smokies?
Absolutely. I mean, we've got to do that, but it's a delicate balance, because if you stay, you know, life is always a delicate balance and a fine line. But it's a fine line because if you stay way too focused on protecting our heritage and making it hard for new development or for new folks to move in, then you're really limiting your future and your potential. But, you know, on the flip side, and some cities have gone through this, where they've grown so fast, you know, just so quickly without any type of, you know, thought to that they really kind of lose, you know, they lose themselves. I mean, Atlanta is a perfect example of that. Some folks say, you know, Nashville has kind of experienced that. I mean, it's
like planned growth.
It is, but too, just one of the things that people like about visiting this area is to hear these stories and to hear, you know, or any area. When you go to the beach, you know, when you go down to the beach in South Carolina or Florida, I mean, you like visiting places that made that place unique and special. And that's not to say that we shouldn't have national chains up here or things like that, but I think a good mix of it really provides kind of a healthy experience, not for just people visiting here, but people that live here too.
Yeah, I mean, they come for the attractions, but they also come for the local flavor, you know. So let's talk about current development, big projects. I know you've come to this area, you've most likely stopped at Tanger Outlets. Your family has been there for a long time. The farmhouse still stands.
We haven't burned it down.
Not yet.
Yeah. Although with how old that building is, you know, we don't need any building inspectors out in there anytime soon. But
give us the history of that. And across the street, that was an Ogle farm.
The property in Sevierville, Five Oaks, been in our family since 1925. That was the Sevierville Ogles. You know, so it was a different tribe of Ogles than what you know we've talked about earlier up in Gatlinburg.
And it's sat undeveloped for a while.
Oh yeah, it was a fully functioning farm. I mean, my great grandfather, the guy, he was Dr. John W. Ogle. He was a medical doctor. Went and saw all of his patients on horseback. You know, and that was one of the reasons that he bought that farm in 1925. One of the reasons that he bought it was because it was kind of the geographic center of Sevier County. So he was able to go see his, you know, it allowed for him to go see his patients more efficiently. But he was a doctor, but he also raised Tennessee walking horses. That was one of his biggest hobbies. They raised tobacco, other certain crops, some livestock. So it was a fully functioning farm. Up until about probably the 80s was when it really started to change more to a commercial.
How did you land on Skyland Ranch?
Skyland's one of the latest ventures that we've been able to be a part of. Mark and Lisa Williford are the owners of it, and you talk about innovative and people who are really gifted in that. You know, with in the attractions industry. I mean, they came. We approached them about this just general broad idea that we had about an attraction on the other side of the street from the outlet center, and you know, we've got some topography back there that makes certain types of development unfeasible because of just with construction cost and you know things of that nature. there were some just broad kind of ideas that we discussed with them, and then they really took this broad idea and brought this. We told them a little bit about the history of the property and kind of some things that I'd told you guys about, and then they just kind of took it and ran with it and have made it into what it is today. And it's something that we could continue to grow because we've got over 150 acres on that side of the parkway.
What exactly is there now, and then what do you see being there 10 years from now?
Boy, 10 years from now, I hope I'm alive. Okay. But no. So now they've got a mountain coaster and there's several in this market, and I'm obviously biased, but this one's really great. It's over a mile long, so it's not only the biggest in Sevier County, it's the largest in the southeast, or longest in the southeast. So that's one of the anchors of the development. But then also they've got the chairlift up to the top, and it really kind of starts with the miniature farm animals. So it really creates this interactive experience for the guests to interact with miniature donkeys and sheep and cows, and I mean it's been they've almost got built-in mascots from day one. And they've got up top there's food and beverage, there's playgrounds, they've got a big observation deck and walking path up there with some incredible views. When you think about views of the Smokies, and you always immediately think about Gatlinburg because it's just right there. People don't usually think about Sevierville, but there are some great views in Sevierville. They've got a cabin development right now that's got just as good of a view that we've got. There's some great views in Sevierville, and that's one of them. It's just kind of a panoramic 360 of the Smokies, but also into Sevierville and up the Parkway and Pigeon Forge. So it's a unique setting up there.
What else are you eyeing for that property when you look to develop that acreage?
We just want to continue to add more things for folks to do up there. And so there's a lot of different ways that we can take that, but hopefully you'll start to see more rides. Now to what scale and what nature, we don't know. But we just want to, staying within the theme, we want to just to continue to add things that people would enjoy and really, just add to the overall experience.
And there's a farm kitchen there.
Yeah, there's a restaurant down below, Five Oaks Farm Kitchen. I talked about Dr. John earlier. His wife, Blanche, was an incredible cook. I never had any, but genetically, I guess it passes down. But she was a tremendous cook, and they would have big meals over at where our office is today, the farmhouse. They'd have really big meals over there, and she'd ring that dinner bell, and all the folks that they had working the farm would come in, friends would come in, neighbors would come in, and they'd have 50 or 60 people out there, and they'd share a meal, and she'd cook all of it. And so that was one of the inspirations behind Five Oaks Farm Kitchen, was to kind of pay tribute to her, and to great Southern cuisine, all your the staples, fried chicken, meatloaf, all the good stuff. Our roots go back in retail, and so we've worked on projects like Ogle Brothers General Store was one of our more recent business endeavors. It's a general store up right, we're on the western side of Five Oaks, where Skyland Ranch and Five Oaks Farm Kitchen are located. We were about 15 years ago, we co-developed along with Nantahala Outdoor Center, the NOC Great Outpost up in Gatlinburg, along with some other smaller general stores that we've done in the market. But general stores are really fun. They're unique. The inventory lines are constantly evolving and changing, which I think people really love. We don't have the exclusive on general stores in the Smokies. I mean, there's general stores all across the country, but I think people love to take home a piece of Southern Appalachia with them, and so that's something that we've tried to help create.
I do want to ask you about the wildfires in 2016. I had a chance to visit your parents' home which was destroyed during the wildfires. As you're watching that play out, what was that like for you and your family? And you know, yes, you're thinking of current businesses, but it's your family's heritage.
Yeah, the house may have burned, but the site didn't. You know, in terms of that site's still there. That place on that mountain, the forest and the trees and all the vegetation, it'll grow back, and that house will be rebuilt, and they rebuilt it. But I think what those fires proved and showed was how much we need each other, and how important, you know, Sevierville is to Gatlinburg, and how important Gatlinburg is to Pigeon Forge, and vice versa. That really, I think, was a lesson for all of us, and I think it made us stronger and better, you know. But you know, anytime you lose any life, you know, it's a day we certainly will never forget, and hopefully never see again.
30, 40 years from now, where do you see Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, Sevierville?
Well, hopefully it's still, you know, one of the premier destinations for travelers in the United States, and we've got room to grow. Most of that room is in the city of Sevierville. You know, Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge can still continue to grow, but I mean they are from a topography standpoint, and you know, they're a little closer into the mountains. I mean, there's just not as much developable acreage left. But I hope we continue to grow, and I hope we continue to kind of keep that, to keep our beginnings, you know, a part of what we do moving forward, in terms of just, you know, the history and the heritage that we've got, to let it play out in all these future developments. And I think up to where we are right now, you know, where we sit today, I think we've done a pretty good job of that. I mean, and I'm not meaning we. I'm talking about we as you know, as a market, as a community. You know, I think you see that.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been
absolutely.
fun. We packed a lot into this episode: history, local flavor, and stops you need to visit. We have more stories and videos on our Hollers and Hills website, and we'd love for you to share your Smoky Mountain memory when you log on. And don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, and YouTube.